My name is Betty, I'm 38 years old. My ex-husband's name is Dan, he's 42. We got married when I was 24 and he was 28. We met at a gas station. Seriously. I was working the night shift as a cashier at an Exxon, and he was unloading trucks with drinks for the same store. He came in 3 times to buy himself Mountain Dew, and on the 4th time he asked for my number. 6 months later we were living together. This was never a story about millions. Dan worked as a delivery driver for a local bakery his whole life. He hauled bread and pastries to cafes and restaurants within a 150-mile radius of our small town in Ohio. They paid crap, but he loved that no one was breathing down his neck. After a break, I had our son. I worked as a salesperson at a shoe store in the mall. Yes, the same lady who brings out boxes of sneakers and says, "Try these, they're half a size bigger." Our combined income rarely exceeded $65K a year. A Visa credit card, a house with a mortgage. We bought it before the crash like idiots. A 2015 car with miles. Our son, our mutual son, is Noah. He's 12 now, at the time of the divorce he was 9. We lived like a million other families in Ohio. Budget on debit cards, pizza on Fridays, vacation once a year at the lake in a rented shack. No IT consulting, no business trips to Dubai. At most he would sometimes drive to Cleveland for parts for his truck. The problem started when my cousin, Lindsay, came back into our lives. Lindsay, my first cousin, my mom's brother's daughter, always had a rough life. She's 3 years younger than me, 35. She works as a nurse in a nursing home, but she constantly changes jobs. Either she gets fired for being late, or she quits after a fight with the head doctor. In 2019 she divorced her husband, Carlos, who worked in construction. Reason for divorce: she caught him with his own ex. Yeah, irony. Lindsay lived in Indianapolis, and we live in Springfield. After the divorce she fell into such a depression that she couldn't get off the couch. My aunt called my mom crying. Lindsay isn't eating, she's just drinking wine and watching The Bachelor. Me, the fool, I suggested. Let her come stay with us for a couple of weeks, get her mind off things, help me with Noah while I'm on evening shifts. Dan said, "I don't know, it's cramped here." I snore. "What kind of guest is she?" I said, "She's my blood sister, she's grieving." Dan shrugged. Lindsay arrived on September 14, 2020 with 1 suitcase and a box of chocolate cake from Carlos that was left in the freezer. I didn't know then that that damn cake would be symbolic. The first 2 weeks were normal. Lindsay cried, I hugged her, we watched old photos together. Dan was polite but distant. I told myself, he just doesn't like guests. In the evening when I left for my shift at Famous Footwear, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., Dan stayed with Noah, did homework, then ate, and Lindsay went to her room, the guest bedroom, which used to be my home office. That went on for a month. First red flag. After a month I noticed that my pantyhose, new, in the package, weren't in my drawer. I asked Lindsay, "Did you take my pantyhose?" She blushed and said, "Oh sorry, I ripped mine and didn't have spares, I'll buy new ones." I believed her. Pantyhose, whatever. Second red flag. Dan started coming home late from work. The bakery closed at 6 p.m., but he'd come home at 8 p.m., blaming traffic on Route 70. Traffic in Ohio at 6 p.m.? I rarely worked days then, but still strange. He said, "I was unloading a new warehouse, they paid me a bonus." The bonus was $50, which he used to buy Lindsay a bouquet of roses. "What's that for?" I asked. "She was crying today, I wanted to support her," he said. Third red flag was the stupidest. I forgot my lunch at home. I usually take leftovers from dinner. I came back to the house at 2 p.m., and Dan was supposed to be behind the wheel in Kingston. I pull into the driveway. The bakery truck is not there. His personal Ford F-150 is there. Strange. I went in through the back door because the front was locked. We never locked the front door. But this time it was locked. I hear voices from the living room. Quiet. I walk into the kitchen, and from there you can see the couch. Lindsay is sitting on Dan's lap. She's in a tank top, his hand is on her waist. They're just sitting and watching TV. Like a couple. I froze. Then Lindsay saw me, squealed, fell off his lap. Dan muttered. Her legs hurt, I was giving her a massage. I said, "A massage? You're a delivery driver, you don't know how to massage." I grabbed my lunch and left. In the car I cried. Then I called my mother. My mother said what all mothers say in those situations. You're imagining things. She's your sister, they wouldn't dare. I convinced myself I was imagining things. Lindsay left 2 weeks after that incident. She said she found a new job in Covington, that she was feeling better, thank you for the hospitality. Dan was quiet, thoughtful for 2 days, then went back to his normal routine. I breathed a sigh of relief. The next year and a half, from the end of 2020 to spring 2022, we lived like robots. Sex became less frequent, but I blamed fatigue. He stopped giving compliments, I blamed age. Now looking back I understand. He was waiting for me to file for divorce myself so he wouldn't look like the jerk. But I didn't file. Everything came out on April 11, 2022. It was Noah's birthday, he turned 10. We were gathering guests at Chuck E. Cheese, classic. Dan yelled at me in the morning that he didn't get enough sleep, that he was sick of these parties. But then he calmed down and said he'd drive to Walmart for soda. He left his phone on the kitchen table. He usually doesn't forget it. I picked it up. No Face ID, no, he had an old Samsung with a home button. He was asleep, I just swiped up. The code was Noah's birth year. I knew it. I opened messages. No Telegram, no WhatsApp. Just SMS. I scrolled to the contact, Lindsay. They texted each other every day, 50 messages each. I read the last week's worth. Lindsay. When are you going to tell her? I can't hide anymore. We could rent an apartment in Covington, it's cheap. Dan. Not now, Noah has school, she'll raise hell. Be patient. I love you. Lindsay. You promised in the spring. It's spring already, Dan. You and I have more in common than you and her. All she does is whine about shoes and shifts. Dan. I know. Just give me time. I scrolled up. I found their texts from 2 weeks before my massage incident. Turns out they were screwing in my bed while I was on my shift. He finished his deliveries at 4 p.m. My mother-in-law picked up Noah, she lived 3 streets away, and they had 2 hours. 2 hours to use my shower, my sheets, my pillow. Lindsay wrote, "Your pillow smells like you. I like it. Oh, and in the bed there was my favorite blanket from my grandmother. I burned it afterwards. I didn't scream. I sat on the kitchen floor and sat there until Dan came back with the soda. He walked in, saw his phone in my hand, put the bags on the doorstep and said, 'Betty, not here, not in front of Noah.' I said, 'You fucked my cousin in my bed. You read her, good night, before you kissed me. You discussed when you'd tell me I'm not needed anymore. All this time, a year and a half? She left in 2020 and you kept going?' He confessed. Partially. He said it started, emotionally, in the first week, and physically in the second month, when I worked from 5 to 10. He said he was guilty, but that Lindsay understood him, and that I was always nagging him. You were always complaining about money, the house, me. Lindsay listened, laughed, it was easy with her. I asked, 'Do you love her?' He said, 'I don't know.' He knew. I said, 'Get the hell out. And take your Mountain Dew.' He left to his mother's. An hour later his mother called me and said I was breaking up the family. I was in such shock that I didn't eat for 3 days. I sent Noah to a friend's for the weekend. Then I called a lawyer. Not an expensive one who charged $200 for a consultation. His name was Milton, he was old, with a beer belly, and he said, 'Honey, in Ohio a fault divorce takes a long time. But do you have proof of infidelity? Screenshots?' I said, 'Yes, I have his phone.' He said, 'Make copies. And don't kick him out of the house. Let him come back. If he left voluntarily, that could work against you in the property settlement.' Dan came back after 3 days because his mother had no space. He slept on the couch in the living room. Noah didn't understand what was happening. I told him, 'Mom and Dad are just working a lot.' Noah isn't stupid. He understood everything when he saw that Dad wasn't kissing Mom on the cheek anymore. Important moment. During those 3 days I did something that later destroyed their relationship. I found Lindsay's sister, Sheila. Sheila is 2 years older than Lindsay, works at a laundromat, not mean but not a saint either. I called Sheila and asked, 'Did you know that your sister is fucking my husband?' Sheila was silent for a minute, then said, 'I suspected when she moved to Covington. She mentioned some driver from Ohio. I didn't know it was yours. Oh God, Betty, I'm sorry.' We met at a cafe 2 days later. Sheila told me everything she knew. Where Lindsay lives now, renting a room from an elderly couple. Where she works, that same nursing home but in Covington, and that she has a new car. Where does a part-time nurse get money for a new car? I asked Sheila. She said, Dan couldn't buy her a car, he makes $48K. But it turned out he could. He took out a loan for our roof repair, $12K, and spent the money not on the roof but on a used Honda for Lindsay. The roof leaked all last summer, I put out buckets. He said, contractors are expensive. And the money went to a 2016 Honda CR-V. Milton said, we need proof of not just infidelity but also financial fraud. Do you have the loan agreement? I found the loan agreement in Dan's drawer along with unpaid parking tickets. He took the loan online, printed a copy and hid it. The amount? $12,400. I photographed it. I also found a receipt from a car dealership in Covington made out to Lindsay. It said, buyer. Lindsay, last name, partial payment cash $4,500, remainder by transfer. The transfer was from Dan's card. He didn't know that I remembered his online banking password. I helped him set up the app. I logged into the transaction history for March 2021. A transfer to Lindsay for $7,900. Labeled, gift. What kind of gift for $8K to a cousin on a driver's salary? I took a screenshot and emailed it to myself. The next step was risky. I hired a private investigator. Not an expensive one who films hotels, but a guy named Marv, a former cop who agreed for $600 to follow Dan for 3 days. I told Marv. He drives to Covington every Saturday, supposedly to fish on the Miami River. Marv went, and the following Saturday he sent me 18 photos of Dan entering Lindsay's house, the one rented from the elderly couple. Then the two of them going out to Applebee's holding hands, and at 10 p.m. going back inside and the light going off in Lindsay's bedroom. The photos are black and white, not magazine quality, but enough for court. Holding hands, kissing by the car. My lawyers, Milton and his assistant, a redhead named Kathy who drank coffee with bourbon, came up with a plan. I had to pretend to give up. Play relaxed, agreeable to a peaceful divorce. I had to suggest to Dan. Let's divorce as friends, 50-50, sell the house. I'll move with Noah to an apartment, you do what you want. I had to lower his guard. I played along for 3 weeks. It was harder than childbirth. I smiled at dinner, I asked him how his damn fishing trip went, I even touched his back once. Dan relaxed. He started leaving his phone out in the open. He started talking to Lindsay on the phone in front of me, calling her cousin, thinking I didn't understand. The climax came on May 5th. I said, Dan, let's go to a restaurant Friday night and talk about the divorce details like civilized people. He was happy. He told Lindsay he was meeting me, for formalities. Lindsay got jealous and texted him, if you sleep with her I'll kill myself. I saw that message through his phone that he forgot again. On Friday, May 6th, we went to an Italian restaurant. I dressed up nice, not for him, for myself. I ordered wine, and over dinner I said, Dan, you were right. Our marriage was all me, I annoyed you. Let me prepare the papers, you sign them, and we go our separate ways. Noah will live with me, you can see him on weekends. Dan exhaled. He said, Betty, I know I did wrong. But you have no idea how happy I am with Lindsay. I said, I have some idea. I wish you happiness. I smiled. 2 days later I filed a petition in Clark County Court. The petition included infidelity, misappropriation of marital funds, the roof loan spent on the mistress, emotional distress, request for full custody, request to keep the house with me buying out Dan's share through support payments, and a request to bar Lindsay from coming within 500 meters of our house and Noah. The most interesting part started when the subpoena arrived for Lindsay. She was working at the nursing home in Covington. The facility was called Golden Meadows. It was a private nursing home, not the worst but not fancy. Mostly women over 50 worked there, and they all gossiped. I went all in. I wrote a letter to the director of Golden Meadows. No anger, just facts. Your employee Lindsay, last name, had a long-term affair with my husband, who used credit funds intended for roof repair on a house with a minor child to buy her a car. This is known in town. I am not asking for termination, but as a mother I feel it is my duty to inform you that her moral character may affect vulnerable elderly people. The letter was anonymous, but I signed it, concerned relative. The director, a woman named Deborah, called Lindsay on the carpet. Lindsay admitted, yes, she had a relationship, but it was personal. Deborah said, personal becomes professional when it's written about on social media and can harm the facility's reputation. Lindsay was fired a week later. Not for the affair, for creating reputational risk. Is that legal? I don't know. But they did it. Lindsay was left without a job. No savings. The car, that same Honda, she sold to pay a lawyer for a consultation when she was called to court as a witness. Yes, the fool Dan wanted to bring Lindsay to court to confirm his feelings. The judge, a 58-year-old woman, looked at Lindsay like she was a cockroach. Court hearings lasted 4 months. I came to each one with a folder full of documents, in a conservative blouse, with Noah who I left with a friend in the hallway. Dan came in jeans and a t-shirt with a beer logo. His lawyer was some 25-year-old kid who didn't know which side of the table to stand on. Key points. Infidelity. I provided screenshots and Marv's photos. The judge asked Dan, "Do these photos date from the period when you were married?" Dan said, "Yes, Judge. Infidelity is established. Financial violations. The loan for $12,400. Judge. Where did the money go? Dan. To repairs. Me. Here is a photo of our roof last year. There's a hole taped over with plastic. Here is an estimate from a construction company that inspected the roof this year and said no repairs were done." Judge. Mr. Dan, you are lying under oath. He went pale. Custody. I worked 30 hours a week, Noah was always with me. Dan drove a truck and was away. Plus the infidelity. The judge granted me full physical custody, joint legal, meaning he has a say on paper but Noah lives with me. Support. Dan has to pay $1,200 per month for Noah plus $500 per month for me for 2 years, because I sacrificed career opportunities. I worked only 30 hours instead of 40 to pick up Noah from school. It's not a lot, but in Ohio it's standard. The house. The house was appraised at $180,000. Remaining mortgage $90,000. Dan's share $45,000. The judge said, "Betty, you can pay Dan his share over 5 years without interest if you prove income. I have freelance work, I also did custom knitting on the side, hats, scarves, plus my store job." I said, "I'll pay." Dan wanted to sell the house to get his money immediately. The judge said, "The child has school, district, friends. A sale is not in the child's best interest. The house stayed with me. Dan now lives in a trailer park 20 miles from our town. The trailer is old, bought for $8,000 from his uncle. He still works at the same bakery but was demoted to warehouse loader, no roots, because he was late for his shift 3 times, due to depression. His salary dropped to $32,000 a year. He pays support through the sheriff's office because I filed for wage garnishment. He sees Noah every other Saturday, and only because his mother, my ex-mother-in-law, picks up Noah and brings him. Dan lives alone. Lindsay left him 2 months after the court. Why did Lindsay leave him? Here's why. After she got fired from the nursing home, Lindsay moved into Dan's trailer. The trailer is 27 feet, toilet outside, wood heating. She lasted 2 weeks, then demanded that Dan sell his tools, a set of wrenches and an air compressor, and buy her a bus ticket back to Indianapolis. Dan told her off. Then Lindsay called me. Yes, she called me and asked me to take her back into the family because Dan is crazy. I asked, "Lindsay, you fucked my husband in my bed. You used my lipstick for weeks. You took money for a car that was supposed to go to the roof over my head. And now you want me to feel sorry for you?" She said, "Betty, we're family." I said, "No, Lindsay. Family doesn't do that. Family doesn't fuck their cousins' husbands. If you come to my town, I'll call the police." She never called again. The last I heard from Sheila. Lindsay works the cash register at a Wendy's in Indianapolis, lives in one room with 2 other women, and has started having problems with alcohol. Do I feel sorry for her? No, honestly. I don't wish her evil. I wish her to understand that actions have consequences. It's July 2024 now. 2 years since the court. Noah is in 6th grade. We painted his room blue because he's a Columbus Blue Jackets fan. I no longer work at the shoe store. I work as an administrator at a small dental practice. I have my license now, drive a 2010 Toyota Camry, but it never lets me down. The house I'm repairing bit by bit. The roof was fixed last year for $7,000. I took a small loan, almost paid it off. In the living room there's a new couch that I picked out alone, without worrying about who would sit on it. No dog anymore, but I got a cat. The cat's name is Simon, he's orange and fat. Personal life? I'm seeing a man named Curtis. He's a welder at an auto body shop. Divorced, like me. He's 44, has 2 kids. He knows my story, I know his. We go to the movies every 2 weeks, and he never touches my phone. He didn't even ask for my password. He said, "Every woman deserves peace, not war. We don't live together yet. I'm in no hurry." Noah sometimes asks, "Mom, why does Dad live in a trailer?" I say, "Because Dad made choices that led him there. But Dad loves you, he's just going through a hard time." Noah says, "Is Lindsay an evil witch?" I laugh. No, Lindsay is just a confused person who hurt others and herself. Don't be like Lindsay. The sweetest part of the revenge happened a year after the divorce, when I had almost let the whole thing go. Sheila, Lindsay's sister, calls me and says, "Betty, you need to know this. Dan had a lawsuit after the divorce from Golden Meadows. Remember the nursing home? They sued Lindsay for defamation, because after she got fired she wrote on social media, in a local Facebook group, that the nursing home director was covering up abuse of the elderly. It was a lie, pure revenge. Director Deborah hired a lawyer. Lindsay was ordered to pay $15,000 in damages. Lindsay didn't pay. Then her wages from Wendy's were garnished. She works for cash now, but the tax people still found out. Basically she's in such a hole that she'll never get out. And Dan? Dan tried to file a counterclaim against me for parental alienation, claiming that I was turning Noah against his father. The judge ordered a psychological evaluation. The psychologist worked with Noah for a month. Conclusion: the child does not feel animosity toward the father, but feels disappointment due to his absence. The mother does not hinder contact. The father himself limits contact, citing busyness. The claim was dismissed. Dan paid $5,000 for a lawyer he didn't have. The final thing I never told anyone except my friend from work. When I took Dan's phone that day in April 2022, I wasn't just looking for the affair. I had found a hotel receipt from Covington a month earlier. I knew. I set myself up for the blow so I could catch him red-handed. Because if I had just said, "I found a receipt," he would have said, "It's for bakery clients." But the screenshots, the texts, the photos from the couch. Irrefutable. I waited a month, gathering evidence, smiling at him, pretending nothing was wrong. That month ate a piece of my soul. But now, looking back, I understand. If I had shown my cards immediately, I wouldn't have the house, I wouldn't have custody, and Noah might be spending weekends in that trailer park with Dan and a drunk Lindsay. So yes, I didn't do it for revenge. I did it to protect my son. That Dan and Lindsay destroyed each other on their own is just a nice bonus.